Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.
Hi.
So happy to have you here. We rely on your recipes so often.
Our favorite question to start with our guests, Sally, is what did you eat for lunch today, or what are you going to eat for lunch today?
I knew you were going to ask this because I've been listening to your podcast all week. And as I pulled out my lunch, I thought to myself, they're definitely going to grill me about this. But last night my family and we got takeout because I had a really long day in the kitchen. And admittedly, I did not feel like cooking dinner. So we got takeout from a local restaurant and I got a seafood salad. It had like grilled shrimp and fresh crab on it. I live in Maryland, so we have really delicious crab. And I didn't finish all of it because we got some other little nibbles and bites too. So I finished it for lunch today. So I didn't cook anything or bake anything for my lunch. It was leftovers.
That's kind of my favorite lunch of all time is good takeout leftovers. So Sally, congratulations on your new book. It's phenomenal. You've been blogging since 2011 and are entirely self-taught, but you grew up in a family where scratch-made baking was celebrated. What made you decide to start sharing your recipes online?
Well, so I think it was during a time I was in my 20s, and like you said, I grew up around food and from scratch baking. It's always meant so much to me, kind of instilled in me since I was younger, like a lot of us cooks and bakers. I was in my mid 20s. I was working in the corporate world in a job in finance, and I craved something more creative, and to tap into that creativity, I started baking more and more and relying on those recipes that I loved from home. And I began sharing those baked goods with my colleagues, and they would ask me for the recipe, and I would just type it in an email real quick and send it off. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if I put this all on a website? And if I had a food blog, I knew nothing about blogging whatsoever. And I looked up how to blog, how to start a food blog. I had this little free account, and I would just input my recipes as if I was just kind of writing them down. There was no rhyme or reason. I would put in multiple a day. I would send them off to my colleagues. Again, no plan whatsoever, but it was just because I loved sharing what I was making.
I, for one, am really glad that you decided to do that. And I'm sure that all of your fans also agree that we're happy that you started sharing your recipes. Sally, I'm wondering if, aside from your family, are there any other cooks or chefs that you really admire or are inspired by? Is there a cookbook that you're always reaching for as well?
There are a lot of cookbooks that I reach for. I love to read cookbooks. I read them like novels. I don't read regular books. I only read cookbooks. So there are so many bakers and chefs that I'm inspired by. Off the top of my head, some of my recent favorites, and actually just, always favorites, and in no particular order, I really admire Claire Saffitz. She's written a few books, and I really love her book called Dessert Person. She has such a wonderful array of just a big selection of different desserts, and she delivers her recipes in such a way that it just gives you a lot of confidence, whether you're a new baker or if you are a well-seasoned baker. So I draw a lot of inspiration from her. I'm a big fan. I also love Smitten Kitchen, Deb. I love her recipes, and I've had the pleasure of meeting her, and she's so kind. And I love her way of writing, and her recipes, of course, are always so dependable. There's a new book out this year or last year. It's called Sift. I don't know if you have heard of it. It's by Nicola Lamb, and it digs way down deep into the science of baking, which I love to read about and learn about. I've recommended that to a lot of my close personal friends and to my audience too. Um, I love the website Grandbaby Cakes. Her name's Jocelyn. She wrote a book a couple years ago called Everyday Grand, and it's so fun and colorful and vibrant. And I love all she does. I have too many favorites. I
I know
can't
it's
list them
hard
It's
to
all.
narrow
hard.
them down. And you're speaking to a lot of our favorites too. Spin Kitchen, that website, that blog taught me how to bake when I was first starting out as a personal chef because she's been food blogging for a very long time as well. I think just a few
She's an
years before
OG.
you. Yeah, very OG. But you're also talking about cookbook authors who are really precise. Like these recipes, they're not ambiguous, they're very clear, they always work as written. And I think that's really true for what you do as well. And I think people know to come to Sally's Baking Addiction for that. These are baked goods that are going to turn out as written. And I just really appreciate that. It also made me wonder, what is the most popular recipe that you've ever shared? And did its popularity surprise you?
So, the most popular recipe I've ever shared doesn't surprise me. It's a recipe called Chewy Chocolate Chip Cookies, and it's a recipe on my website and also in my new book, Sally's Baking 101. I originally published the recipe in 2013, so it's been over a decade. And it's just a really, really delicious chocolate chip cookie recipe. It's very chewy. I add extra brown sugar and extra egg yolk. There is some cornstarch in there to make it really soft. The edges get nice and crisp. The texture is almost like so chewy that it's almost kind of fudgy. It's just a very unique textured cookie, and it has just climbed to the top of my recipes. So it doesn't surprise me because who doesn't love a chocolate chip cookie?
I mean, Sally, it sounds so incredible. It is sometimes hard to predict, though. Is there a recipe that you really love that you wish more people would try that's not so popular of yours that you also really love?
It's called burnt sugar cake.
Ooh.
Okay. And when people hear the word burnt, they are probably turned off. But this is a recipe that I developed 5 or 6 years ago. My mother-in-law grew up loving this type of cake, and I really wanted to make a cake that lived up to her standards, and she did end up loving it. So it's like a basic buttery white vanilla cake, and then I add a burnt sugar syrup to the cake batter, and it gives it this very deep caramelized flavor. It doesn't taste bitter at all. It's more of just very deep caramel. And then the buttercream gets more of that burnt sugar syrup, and then I top it with homemade salted caramel sauce. Oh my gosh, it is so good and worth every single minute of your time to make. But people are turned off by the title burnt sugar, so I snuck the word caramel in there. Burnt sugar caramel cake.
It's so up my alley. I'm definitely one of those people who chars my marshmallow till they're extremely black. So that that kind of burnt, I know you're not saying it's like too burnt. It's that flavor of the caramelly notes and the deep
Yeah.
brown sugary flavors that come out. I think that sounds incredible. And I love that you incorporated it both into the batter and into the frosting. It's extremely smart. You know, fall hosting is really on both of our minds. We're always thinking about what we can be serving our guests, what we can be bringing to the potluck or to any kind of gathering that's happening this time of year. Do you have a favorite easy fall baked good?
Fall is my go-to time. It is my time when I am revved up and ready to bake. It is my busy season. So I have a lot, but one comes in mind, and it's a recipe that I decided to publish in Sally's Baking 101. It's a recipe for chai-spiced blondies. You think of blondies, it's, just a very basic kind of dessert, but this recipe in particular just really takes advantage of those delicious chai spices. The base is very buttery, brown sugar, lots of vanilla in there. You don't need a mixer for mixing up the batter. And then I add white chocolate. You can use white chocolate morsels or like a bar of white chocolate, chop it up real fine, and top it with a drizzle of white chocolate once those bars are finished in the oven and set. It is so good, and they're so quick and simple to make and also very easy to transport whenever I need to take a baked good somewhere. Brownies and bars are usually at the top of my list because they transport so easily.
I feel the same. Even if you get in the car and, you have to stop short, they're going to stay together. They're not going to break apart. Sally, I'm wondering if there's a baked good that you really love to take to a breakfast or a brunch.
Yes, again, there are many. And if I have to narrow it down to the fall season and one that I would again be taking somewhere, I would go for muffins. Muffins, again, travel very easily and they are very easy for people to just grab and eat. You don't need a fork or a plate or anything. And one that comes to mind is also from my book, Sally's Baking 101. You can tell I'm very excited about my book.
So are
You
we.
It is
should be. Yeah.
it's a recipe for pumpkin spice latte muffins. So it's more than just a regular pumpkin muffin. When you bite into it, you get that coffee flavor from espresso powder that I added to the batter. And then after baking them, you pour out a little of the center and you add a like an espresso hinted cream cheese whipped cream. So it's like an elevated muffin. It's unexpected, but still very appropriate for breakfast and brunch. It just is so special. So that is one of the recipes. It's actually one of the last recipes I developed for my book because I was thinking so long and hard about a really fun pumpkin muffin. And I gave this recipe so much thought and so much testing. I'm so thrilled with the result. Definitely one of my top picks for new recipes that are coming out in this book.
That sounds so good. I actually think people don't realize how good coffee flavors go with true pumpkin, not just the syrup that goes into a latte. Years ago, I started adding espresso powder to my pumpkin pie filling for the same reason. It's almost like what it does to brownies. It just adds such a depth of flavor and it pairs so well with pumpkin, which is kind of sweet, kind of one note. So to have the spices and the coffee and the tanginess of that cream cheese topping, oh, that just is a perfect combination to me.
I need to try that in my pumpkin
Try
pie.
it. It works so well. And I just use that espresso powder, the instant powder that you would use in a
Yeah.
brownie. Yeah.
You know what I've put in my pumpkin pie filling, and I use it in the pumpkin pie that's in my book and on my site? A little bit of freshly cracked black pepper.
Oh,
The
yeah.
black pepper brings out the spice flavor. I learned it from King Arthur Baking. They had that in the recipe years ago, and I decided to try it. It's so good.
That sounds amazing, actually. And we've already talked about chocolate chip cookies, which is also one of our favorite all time desserts. But as the days get chillier and colder and we're getting into all the fun flavors, is there a cookie that you're reaching for? I know there might be more than one, but we'd love to hear one that you really love this time of year.
Yes, you know that I always have more than one favorite, don't you? Okay, so I am going to go with a recipe that I would consider has gone viral on my website. It's a very popular fall cookie recipe on my site, and it was so popular, in fact, that I wanted to publish it in my book. The book didn't feel complete without it. It's a recipe for maple brown sugar cookies. The flavor of maple itself in the cookie is so wonderful. It's not overpowering, but it's just strikes the right balance with the brown sugar in the dough. And the cookies themselves are very chewy, deeply, deeply chewy. Again, almost that like fudgy, chewy consistency. The edges are nice and crisp. And then you can add pecans to the cookie dough. If you don't like nuts, you can leave the pecans out. And then the finishing touch is a maple icing that you cook on the stovetop. And then the icing sets. So again, this is a great cookie that you can travel with. You can stack them once the icing sets, and they're always, always well received.
I love pecans, so I would definitely be putting pecans in mine. Sally, I'm wondering, do you have a go-to cake or quick bread that you make in the fall that comes together quickly? Maybe even something that your family asks for that you just want to keep on the counter?
Yes, I love that we're covering all baking categories. This is making me very hungry. Obviously, my salad wasn't enough for lunch. Okay, I have a recipe in my book again, and I'm going to choose this one because it's simple to make, but it has an elevated flavor. It's called apple cider spice bread. What you do first is you reduce down the apple cider to really concentrate that flavor. And it's something that I learned when I was developing a recipe for my website, my baked apple cider donuts. So I kind of took what I learned from developing that recipe and applied it here to this cookbook recipe. So you reduce down the apple cider so you get that really concentrated flavor, and then you add lots of delicious spices spices to the batter. There's cinnamon and allspice, cloves and nutmeg, all the yummy things. Lots of brown sugar, and then a little bit of orange zest to kind of add that little fresh flavor to make that apple cider flavor pop. And then some fresh apple is in there. You finish it off with apple cider glaze using more of that reduced apple cider concentrate. Oh my gosh, so good.
I love your recipes in the way that they're building flavor on each other. It's like if it's called apple cider, you are going to get apple cider in every element.
Oh, every element. Every element of flavor that we can, we'll pack in there.
It also makes me think, I also really love Claire Saffit's recipes. And it reminds me years ago for Bon Appetit, she did a recipe for a deep dish apple pie where she also reduces apple cider for the filling. And I was like, and it is a little fussy. Like, I know not everyone wants to do that, but the few times that I have done it, it's made such a difference because that reduced apple cider gives so much flavor to whatever you're adding it to.
It really does. And it makes it worth it when you take that first bite. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I took the time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's easier recipes like the blondies, and there might be something else that takes a tiny bit more work, but it pays off big. But going back to fall flavors, it's hard not to think about apples this time of year. Do you have a favorite apple dessert? Again, I think it's not fair that we keep asking you for favorites, so thank you for playing along.
Favorite apple dessert? I'm going to go with the apple cake recipe. This is one that's on my website, and I call it fresh apple cake. It is one of the most popular fall recipes that I have. It's just a basic sheet cake, so there's no fussy decorating or anything like that. You can serve it plain. There is so much flavor packed into this cake, and with all of the spices and the chopped apples, again, I used a little orange juice in it to really add some fresh, zingy flavor. And then there's an optional brown sugar glaze. So again, you could just serve it as a delicious sheet cake. It's deliciously moist, it's full of apples, or you can, if you have a little extra time, you can make a really quick brown sugar glaze or just a simple dusting of powdered sugar or nothing at all. It always satisfies. There's so much flavor in the cake itself.
You know, Sally, in the fall, hosting is something that everyone is thinking about, and that's something that Sonia and I love to share as fall menus. And I'm just wondering if there's also maybe a beverage that you like to host with this time of year.
Yes, definitely. So I don't publish a ton of drink and beverage recipes on my website. I do have a few, and I'm very selective about it because I want the few that I do publish to just be so delicious and something my readers and audience will really like. I have one recipe in mind, and it's a recipe I published over a decade ago. It's for Honeycrisp apple red sangria. So it's a red sangria. You make it with Honeycrisp apples and an orange in there. Again, apple cider. I really take advantage of apple cider in the fall. Some orange juice, lemon juice, brandy, and then just a simple bottle of red wine. You don't need to spend a ton of money on it. I mean, there's so many other flavors in the sangria, and it's something that you can make ahead of time. And then when I serve it, and this is just a little something extra, you don't have to do this, but it's always fun, especially if you're hosting, is to make an optional cinnamon sugar rim. So just run an orange slice around the rim and then dip the glass into a cinnamon sugar mixture. So it's really pretty, and you can also garnish with like cinnamon sticks. It's always yummy this time of year.
I like how it kind of marries the transitions of seasons because it's something like sort of refreshing, and it's still not that cold yet in September. And so it sort of carries you into those fall warming spices flavors with something that's sort of still cool and crisp and refreshing. And I never think to add apple to my sangria, but it sounds like a really amazing combination. So is there any specific dish or baked good that you haven't yet tackled on the blog but have always wanted to?
Yes, and I'm going to admit it. I am very scared to make sourdough.
Oh,
That's
And
so
I don't
fair.
know if that makes me less of a baker,
no, not at
but
all.
I am so overwhelmed by it. I've had some friends sit down with me and I've started dabbling in it a little bit, but I can't even keep a plant alive. So I just don't have enough confidence in myself, but it is on my bucket list. And I really want to tackle it because I love sourdough.
Carrie's way more of a sourdough baker than I am. I'm way more of a kind of your style baker. Sometimes I'll describe things I make to Carrie and she's like, that's way too much work. I don't want to do it. But then she describes how she's making sourdough like 3 to 5 loaves a week. And I'm like, how are you on that train? I can't get on it. So I don't think that there's any shame in any of that. And I also personally feel it's not the sourdough baker between us. I live in a place where there's so much beautiful sourdough, so many great bakeries. I'm okay with not being great at it and getting it from someone else.
Yeah, we all have our strong suits, but Carrie, you're going to have to lend me your tips sometime.
Well, I will say I was one of the many millions of people in the pandemic who went into the sourdough space, and I found it easy to do because I was just always home. I think many of us, including me, share that fear of like, am I going to kill the sourdough? But the truth is that if you put flour and water together and you leave it out on your counter for a couple of days, you've got a starter. That's literally all it is. And I've had a lot of help from my food friends. One of my friends gave me part of her sourdough starter. And then we had a guest who came on our podcast. Her name is Adrienne Hale, and she's a friend of Sonia's. And she published this recipe that is so easy that she taught it to small children at a preschool. What is amazing about the recipe actually is that it makes 2 loaves. It's literally like a no-knead sourdough. And when you make it, the children would get to take 1 loaf home for themselves and they would leave the other loaf at a soup kitchen. And so it is so easy. And also I just find that even when I'm making it, that story, I always think about Adrienne, and I don't have the skill of developing that recipe, but that's what amazing people like you who create all these recipes and test them incessantly, that's what makes such a huge difference, you know? So I imagine at some point you'll do it, right?
Yes, I love that. I want to gather all of this advice and I want to look at her recipe and lesson and tutorial. And I just want to find all of these awesome resources and just do it. I just need to do it, you know?
We're going to send you a link to that recipe because she shares it readily online. So we'll send it to you after this.
We'll send it to you after,
Okay.
yes. Sally, we've talked about so many great sweet recipes, and now we've sort of pivoted a little bit to sourdough bread. There was another recipe that really caught my eye on your website, and it was for stromboli because it was something that my mom used to make when I was a kid. And I feel like stromboli is such a great thing to take to like a tailgate or to a party, especially this time of year. And so I'm wondering if you could explain to people what stromboli is, because I don't think everyone knows what it is.
I would love to. And I have a lot of experience with stromboli. So stromboli is like a pizzeria menu staple where I grew up in Philadelphia. And so I grew up around it and I've always loved it. It's a lot of fun to make. It's basically you're taking like a pizza dough, okay? And instead of shaping it like a pizza, topping it like you would a pizza, you're rolling it out sort of as if you were making cinnamon rolls, but instead of topping it with butter and cinnamon and sugar, you're topping it with various meats and cheeses and rolling it up just like you would cinnamon roll and into this big long log of dough, but you're not cutting it into cinnamon rolls. I mean, you could, but you're kind of just baking it all as one big loaf, as you will, and then topping it with melted butter and garlic and parsley and different kinds of herbs, or just leaving it plain and then baking it. And when you cut into it, it's this rolled delicious dough with cheese and meat. And of course, you don't have to use meat. You could do just cheese. You could do vegetables in there. There are no limits when it comes to stromboli fillings. And then you can dip it in a pizza sauce or tomato sauce. It's so good and it's so easy. And it's a perfect recipe for this time of year, you know, as we're exiting summer into fall, again, for those tailgates. You're right, I have it on my website. And it's another one of those recipes that is so good. It's a fan favorite that I put it in my book too. So it's also in Sally's Baking 101. And I use my homemade pizza dough, which is a recipe that comes right before that stromboli in the book.
It sounds really perfect. I did not grow up with it in Seattle, and I am now very convinced to make it at some point this fall. Yeah, it's anything pizza adjacent is my territory. I love all things related to pizza and pizza sauces. So before we get to our last question, everyone can find a link to your new book, Sally's Baking 101, in our show notes. We'll also link to your website and to your Instagram, and people can follow along and see what you're making. And before we go, we love to ask, what do you eat on your birthday?
Ooh, okay. First of all, thank you for linking to all of those wonderful things. You are both so gracious and sweet. I've loved chatting. Ooh, I love this question. Okay, so I don't have regular birthday cake on my birthday. I have carrot cake. It is my favorite type of cake.
Wow.
And my birthday is the day before my dad's birthday. My dad also loves carrot cake, so we kind of combine. And I always end up making the cake for both of us with cream cheese frosting. You can't go wrong. Carrot cake is my number one.
That sounds amazing. I really love that. And I love that you share it with your dad too. That's a cool thing.
And also, I should mention, we'll link all of the recipes that we talked about today in the show notes.
Ooh.
They will also come out in our Substack on Wednesday. So, Sally, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We're so excited about your new book. We love having it on our kitchen counter. We're already trying out recipes. And thank you again for coming on today.
Sonia and Carrie, thank you so much. I love having new foodie friends, and I can't wait for you guys to send me some sourdough tips.
Will do. And thanks for being our food friend, Sally. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.